Right. I'm going to show you some things, and I'm going to speak what the importance of an affidavit is, why an affidavit is so important, and what an affidavit is. An affidavit, obviously, for some people, like you'll say affidavit. It begins with a vowel followed by two consonants, so it means no. So the word has been bastardized in its sense, but the meaning of the word, most people will understand, and they understand fully well what an affidavit is. Even if the trickery of words and letters, the way it's been spelled, is different. So to give a finite meaning of what I mean, or what is meant by the affidavit, then in quantum you would give it a finite mean, so that you've given closure on what that word means. So for the finite mean claim, or put hyphens in between that, but let's just stick for the normal people, yeah? So for the finite mean claim, meaning, yeah, so what you actually truly mean by that word, you know, what the true meaning of that word is, the true definition, DE meaning no, but the true definition, finite meaning of the word affidavit is with a living testimony, living oath, yeah, of a statement of fact, yeah. So that's what an affidavit is. Yeah, you're making a claim, and that in that claim, in that affidavit, in that statement of truth, and in that statement of fact, that is what you're claiming within that affidavit. Yeah, so that we understand what an affidavit is. Yeah, just for some people, but for the normal people, I'm speaking to the normal people. The reason why an affidavit is important. So I'm just going to run some things together. So share screen. So now this is just one little thing that I did up on just some articles that I put together on my LinkedIn. True meaning of the term jurisdiction. I brought it on here just for some maxims in law. Because why maxims in law are so important? Because maxims are irrefutable. So he who is silent is deemed to consent when his advantage is drawn into question. He who is silent is considered as assenting when his interest is at stake. So remember, if you're making an accusation, or if you're making a claim in your affidavit that someone has done wrong, or someone has made a claim and that claim that they've made is incorrect, and you're rebutting it with inside your affidavit, you know, you've caught them out of lies and you're telling them that they're lying. They now have been called a liar. It means they've perjured, they've committed malfeasance in office, or whatever it be. But you've caught them out and you're putting it into your living testimony, yeah, where now it's in their interest, in their stake, that they now have to rebut it. Otherwise, if they fail to rebut it, it is considered assenting, agreeing to. Yeah. Just as one more, like, he who is silent certainly does not confess, but, and this is the but, it is nevertheless true that he does not deny. So the point here is if it is in his interest and stake, because you're accusing a man of making a lie, then it's surely at his stake, because therefore he's done a wrong, and therefore any wrong, as you should know, remedies must be provided. So just to go back onto this one, I'm going to go for what the Baron David Ward did. And this pretty much self-explanatory, but I'm just going to go on to because this is why it's so important, and hopefully with me reading it out, it will get through. It will you will hear it. It will resonate with you better. You know, it's better if you read it out and write it out, because it sinks into yourself as well. However, questions, acts and statutes require consent of the governed to be enforced. Who gave their consent? Proof required, which is a pretty straightforward, simple question, yeah? Because the confusion here is, in this world right now, is what is law? And the main point here is all law is based off the fact that, God gave man dominion of the land, air, and water. And those are the three jurisdictions: land, air, and water. And basically, we, as men and women, we're all made up of all three of those jurisdictions, because we're made up of the land, we're made up of water, and we're also made up of the spirit, or of the soul. Yeah, the soul, yeah, which is space, air, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so those are the three jurisdictions I'm saying to you that make perfect logical sense, that because we are the law, and there is no higher law than man, and all men is equal on an equal geometrical level playing field that we are on this earth, because no man is above another man. There's only the creator, which is defined by all laws, which is God, or the supreme creator, or whatever name you wish to give it. But regardless, he gave man dominion. So we're all equal on this geometrical level playing field. The difference is how we're being deceived and how we allow ourselves to be deceived. So obviously the Baron, he figured out that he was being deceived, and he figured out how he was being deceived. Because when we all come into this world, we're given a legal embodiment through our birth certificate. That legal embodiment was created to our placenta. Now, that legal embodiment is not the living man or woman. And it states on those birth certificates, quite plain and simply, not to use as your identity, because it's not your true identity as a living man. My mother called me Andrew. On the birth certificate, I'll have Andrew Divine. But I'm not Andrew Divine. I'm Andrew. The clan name, family name, whatever you want to call it, yeah, is the divine. So let's talk about an affidavit. I've given you the closure on what an affidavit is. So you know what an affidavit is. An affidavit is a testimony, because only a living man can make an affidavit. Yeah, your legal fiction cannot make an affidavit, because your legal fiction is a piece of paper. Okay. However, what the Baron has done is taken control of his legal embodiment, the Mr. David Ward. And David, or Baron David of the House of Ward, is the Attorney General for his legal fiction. And to represent his legal fiction, he has now requested what they have made claims for. They now have made the claim, because what they was doing with David was it was over a parking ticket. Now, David wasn't arguing about paying the parking ticket. David asked, for why is it this parking ticket can be enforced upon me? And they said it was due to some road traffic act, such and such and such and such. And so he said, okay, it's an act. So he looked into it. And in his affidavit, he gives a perfect description for it that I think if everybody would read it, you would understand it for yourself clearly. So I'll just go, and I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to read just some parts of it that, I think are important. Let's talk about an affidavit. An affidavit is one of the most powerful legal documents there is. This is why lawyers don't want you to use an affidavit. I can go into lawyers and this bar association, but also David clearly goes into this so that you can understand why you can't have two masters, people. You can't have two oaths. You can't swear allegiance to two things, one being higher than the other. Okay, so David clearly points this out in this, and it's very poignant for you to understand that. So, an affidavit is a legal tool by which the facts are established. It is the way. It's a this is the way it is, monkey boy. Prove me wrong. If you can. If you can't, then you have agreed to the content of the affidavit by default. You only have 28 days to prove me wrong. The clock is ticking. So remember, when you make this affidavit, which is a statement of truth, and an oath, a living oath and testimony of the truth, yeah, and a statement of facts. So what you've made a statement, these are facts, and you have 28 days now to rebut, to refute these and provide the evidence, to provide the material evidence to substantiate, yeah, that his facts that he's made the statement of are incorrect, and rebut them. And bear in mind, yeah, when you make an affidavit, you better be sure you have the material evidence to substantiate what you're claiming as a fact. Because if they can better that fact, you've perjured, you've actually lied. And that is the power of an affidavit. It will free you or it will hang you. So you better damn well make sure the facts that you make the claim in there are facts. Yeah. And as long as you have made a statement of fact, you know full well inside your heart that they will not be able to be rebutted. Therefore, you can do it with confidence. Now, bear in mind that David, the affidavit he sent to, as you'll see further on, he sent this affidavit that he's created to 657 MPs. Now, as you should know, these MPs are going to have access to the top members of the Bar Association, which is a private organisation that know all the tricks and traps, yeah, to deceive this man, to prove this man wrong, to prove this man's affidavit incorrect. And they would have had access to the best of the best. And all 657 MPs failed to rebut it. Now, bear that in mind, because if they had have rebutted it, that would have been 657 times whatever the sentence would have been for perjury, because you would have lied. Perjury is lie. So you would have been lying in his affidavit. Therefore, he would have been done for perjury 657 times, meaning, you know, I think it's 10 years, between 7 and 10 years. So let's say 10 years at 567 would have been 6,570 years in prison if he'd have been wrong when he sent this affidavit to the 657 MPs. So once the 28 days have expired, there is a formal agreement between the parties as to what the facts are. That is why the affidavit is the most powerful weapon. There is a legal and binding agreement between the parties that can no longer be disputed because the facts have been established. They had the opportunity. They had to rebut it. Remember, it was in their best interest to. They have to, because they're being called liars. You know, so they have to rebut it. They have to refute it, and they have to provide the material evidence to refute it, or it stands as truth in law. So these are the facts. So in this affidavit, I don't care what anybody says. This is the facts, and no one can dispute it. And not only has it got royal assent when David did this in 2013 and won his court case, and got royal assent by acquiescence because the court said no contest. They couldn't contest him. Because remember, it's all a contest, isn't it? It's all a game. All courts are games. It's a game of vocabulary. And that's how they manipulate your mind into understanding what they're doing. They've got you believing something. They've got you believing that they're serving you and that they're providing a service. That they've got you believing that there is a law and that these people can do these things. Remember, guys, it's an equal level playing field. It's a geometrical level playing field. We're all here. The only difference is they've got a higher degree of how to trick people. But because we have a conscience, normal people have a conscience with empathy. We're not as ruthless as these people. These people are in here are completely ruthless. These are parasites. They have no empathy for you. They could do anything to you and not just wouldn't even bat their eye at seeing you be fucking stripped bare naked, have your children taken away from you, have your house taken off you, have you thrown in prison for life, it wouldn't batter their eyelids, because they don't give a damn. All they care about is the money and serving their master that they've all sworn an oath on, but it isn't a public oath, okay? Because their higher oath, which was the private oath, is where they all their true allegiance is to. So there can't be any further arguments after the 28 days. An unrebutted affidavit is a formal contract. Serve that affidavit to the 657 MPs in the UK government or the government of any country by email who have access to the best of the best lawyers, barristers and judges on the planet, and it remains unrebutted after 28 days, then you have the most powerful affidavit of all that kicks the Magna Carta or any act or statute out of the ballpark. Make no mistake, if you get this affidavit wrong on any point, and you are equally going to do jail for 6,570 years for fraud. This is why the affidavit is so powerful. Do you think I knew this when I hit the email send button on 657 MPs? So don't get your affidavit wrong. This 65-page affidavit is the foundation to what is now 46 securitized commercial liens, and there's a lot more now, by the way. That's gone up a hell of a lot more. For the circa 2.5 billion between only 5 people, and the other 4 people also used the same affidavit as the 65-page affidavit is the legally established and formally agreed facts, because that's what an unrebutted affidavit is: truth in law, it's fact, because it was a statement of facts. So those are facts have been unrebutted, so they remain facts in law. This 65-page affidavit can be used by anybody at all, because it is published. 7 billion people can use this 65-page affidavit in any country, because the same conditions is the same in every country. So this 65-page affidavit can be used by anybody in any country as the foundation of a securitized commercial lien in any country. Now, that's the true power of the affidavit and the pen and email. It was sent by email to 657 MPs. The power at the fingertips sat in your fat armchair. Exhibit C is the affidavit covers the fact that a state is a company no different than McDonald's, and that the judiciary is a sub-office. So the judge is not a judge, and he has no authority because he is the company janitor. Now that's a powerful affidavit, and this executive office has formally agreed that they are a company no different than McDonald's, with a company janitor for a judge with no authority. Let that fact sink in for a while. Attention all people in office, this affidavit below needs your full attention, knowing the full truth will set you free from the ignorance that you are all criminals and don't know it, and that simply following orders to enforce acts and statutes without consent is malfeasance in office at the very least. We all have the choice. God gave us free will, and we know ignorance of the law is no defense. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is our duty and obligation and very great honor to make the following announcement and decree. On this day, the 20th day of March 2015, it is now confirmed formally and on and for the record. As of this day, the 20th day of March 2015, agreed by the state and crown by the way of unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact that there is a lasting and tacit and binding agreement through the acquiescence of and royal assent by default, that there has never been any such thing as law, but only the presumption or the presumption of law, where the presumption is nothing of material substance, and any presumptions can be dismissed by a formal challenge, which is another maxim in law. Words can be rebutted with words. You just need to deny it. They have to produce, the one that's making the claim has to produce the material evidence, which is basically what the Baron did, because he made the claim. Please remember, he didn't challenge the parking ticket. He challenged the ability to enforce the act or statute upon the Mr. Baron David Ward, which was the legal fiction, remember, because the legal fiction has never given the consent. Neither could it really, because it's only a piece of paper. But the legal embodiment, Mr. David Ward, has never given the consent, and the consent is in the form of a wet ink signature. So he asked them to produce that material evidence, but not only did he ask them to produce that material evidence, because they're claiming that the people of England, all over the world, come to think about it, are governed. Well, if you're governed, then you must have given that consent. You must have filled that consent form, that consent to be governed form, for them to claim that you're governed. So they must be able to produce that material evidence. And the Baron asked at the time in 2013, because there was 63.5 million people, according to what the statistics was of the population of England. And he asked for the 63.5 million wet ink signatures on a consent to be governed form to produce the material fact that they were the governed, which is an obvious if they're not governed, because you can't have one without the other. You can't have a government without a governed, because what are they governing? You can't have, it's not, so it doesn't exist. It is now confirmed formally on and for the record of this day of the 20th day of March 2015, agreed by the State and Crown by way of rebuttal statement of fact, by a unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact, that there is a lasting tacit binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default that Parliament does not reign supreme, and that any notion of government has no legitimacy without the material evidence that the governed have given their consent, and that there cannot be any government, for one cannot exist in isolation without the other. Also, that any action taken by way of act or statute of Parliament is and always will be a criminal offence of fraud and malfeasance in the office at the very least. It is confirmed formally, it is now confirmed formally on and for the record as of this day, 2015, blah, 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 that the office of the judiciary is nothing more than a sub-office of a commercial body, and the status of standing of any judge or magistrate currently on this land has no greater status or standing or authority than the manageress of McDonald's. Also, it is formally recognised for and on the record that the state is a legal embodiment by an act of registration, which, if no material substance and therefore fraud by default, and that the interests of the state are the interests of the state alone, to be determined of anybody or anything else, including its own officers of the state, that the actions of the state are now recognised as unconscionable and criminal fraternity capable of heinous crimes without measure. It is now confirmed formally on the record that any and all executed orders and documents must carry an affixed common seal which donates points of origin and that any and all excitable orders and documents must be signed by human hand and in wet ink by a named authoritative living being who takes full responsibility for the content of that formal executive order or document. Any deviation from this standing process, where there is no affixed common seal or signature in wet ink by a living hand with authority to do so, will be recognized in perpetuity as a criminal offence. Now, how many people, how many of you guys out there, have you received something from the allegedly received from something from the court? And on them documents, there's no fixed seal. There's no affixed seal. And by a fixed seal, guys, this crimps the paper. This crimps. This leaves an embossed seal. Yeah, an embossed seal. Yeah, the reason why an embossed seal is because an embossed seal can't be photocopied. Because when you photocopy an embossed seal, mate, the paper's flat. An embossed seal is raised, and you can feel it like braille. You can put your fingers over it. You can feel it's a raised seal. It's a three-dimensional. It's not the two-dimensional paper, just a photocopy. Yeah. So I won't go into anything else, but this is just so that you understand, because I don't want to make it too long for people. But you can go through all this. This is perfectly. It tells you exactly. I just want to go down to here about the formal challenge to the 12 presumptions of law. And bear in mind, this was all within this affidavit, and they failed to rebut any of it. So this is fact. Yeah, there is no law, guys. We are the law. We are the land. We are the air. We are the water. We are the law, the men, the women. When we realize it and stand up and be it, which is what the Baron was trying to do for you all, trying to get you to stand as men, as barons. And what's a baron mean? When you do the etymological on the word baron, it means you're a free man. That's what a baron is, a free man. And it was the barons that took out the kings back in 1215, you remember. So what I'm saying is the men is the most powerful on this land. Kings are servants. Anybody else are servants. They've sworn an oath. Men have never sworn an oath. I've never sworn an oath, and you've never sworn an oath. This is as much of a swearing as an oath that the Baron's done right here now. And all the oath is that he was swearing was that he was telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that was with inside this affidavit. So, like he said at the beginning, prove me wrong, monkey boy. You've got 28 days to do it. Otherwise, it stands as true in law, in any court, in any fucking land, in any world. That's it, full stop. If you can't rebut something, it's the fact, and that's what it is, and that's what he's done. So right then. Formal challenge to the 12 presumptions of law. I mean, I'll show you these as well, actually, because this is, you need to understand, because he's done the breakdowns of the words here so that you understand it. Right then, formal challenge to the 12 presumptions of the word. Definition of presumption, right? And it's given the link to open up. I can't open up on it because this is just a photo. I took photos of it, but I can, I'll show you another place where I'll show you another place where you can go straight to and find the affidavit, and you can print it off, and you can open it up in the PDF, and you can click on these links and go straight to these, so that you can get the definition. So everything's, I mean, obviously all this has been done because they failed to rebut it. Yeah. So definition of presumption, an idea that is taken to be true on the basis of probability. As a presumption is a presumption on which must be agreed by the parties to be true. So, have you agreed that you've given them consent? Because remember, if anybody who's forcing an act or statute on you guys, you have to understand that the only way that they can force that act or statute on you is by the fact that you've consented to it. So if you fail to rebut the fact that you've ever consented, given the consent for that act or statute to be allowed to be enforced, because you've seen Theresa May and many other people saying that you're policed by consent. By consent. Did you ever give your consent? If you didn't, then why are you agreeing to it? I never gave you no consent to enforce no act and statute upon me. So all my fiction, all my legal embodiment, my legal embodiment, because remember, he was the Attorney General. See, people go and get lawyers. You go and get lawyers to speak for your legal embodiment. You're not getting a lawyer to speak for you. The lawyer is going, if I was to be stupid enough to get a lawyer, the lawyer would not be speaking for Andrew the man. The lawyer would be speaking for Andrew Devine, the legal embodiment. And the lawyer, as you will see, has sworn on an oath with the Bar Association, because it's a private corporation. He is not with the public, because the public doesn't exist until it does. It's a bit like common law. Common law doesn't exist until it does. Until we've all formally agreed and agreed to it, it doesn't exist, does it? It only exists within the people that have agreed to it and that have contracted to it. But until we've all agreed to it, then it doesn't exist. So then, and equally, if one party challenges the presumption to be true on the basis of probability, then this is all that is recognized to be required to remove the presumption is a formal challenge to that presumption. The presumption then has no standing or merit in fact, because it's not been agreed upon. If you've agreed upon it, you make it a fact. If you don't rebut it, this is the way they're doing it, because you're not aware of the fact that you never gave consent. You just thought they'd got the right over you. Why? Why would you think that somebody's given that? Because that's what mums and dads told us. That's what the school told us. That's what the television tells us. That's what our friends and neighbours tell us. What? They're the sheep, guys. Are you going to follow the herd? Are you going to stand as the man and woman that you truly are? Or are you going to stay the sheep? Because only the men and women stand up, realize that they never gave. They was never made aware, and they're making it clear that they was never made aware, and there's no such thing. And you're making that claim, produce that material evidence, or jog on, monkey boy, as the Baron would say. A probability is also left the definition of the Oxford Dictionary for the definition of probability. The extent to which something is probable, the likelihood of something happening or being the case. By definition, this is not substantive, and as it is only a probability of what may be, and therefore has no substance in material fact. It's not tangible. It's not tangible. It's a bit like Santa Claus, or that thing beginning with C. I don't want to mention on here because I'll get taken down. It's never been produced, the material evidence to substantiate that it's a fact. And neither has the Tooth Fairy and Santa, has it? But it's been spoken of, and people believe it to be true, but it doesn't exist, and it's never been proven to exist. So therefore, it has no substance in material fact. Remember the claim, yeah? Remember the maxims in law. The maxim in law states, yeah, he who makes the claim carries the burden of proof, meaning he who makes the claim now has to provide the material evidence to substantiate the fact. Otherwise, they've lied, and if they're in office, they've malfeasance in office, yeah? A state court does not operate according to any true rule of law, but by presumptions of the law. Therefore, if presumptions presented by a private bar guild are not rebutted I'll read that again. A state court does not operate according to any true rule of law, but by the presumptions of law. Let this sink in, guys. Therefore, if presumptions presented by the private bar guild are not rebutted, they become fact and are therefore said to stand true, just by the remember, because now you've agreed. Even though you didn't agree, you agreed tacitly, because remember, there is that tacit agreement, because obviously it mattered to you. It mattered to you. There was an interest for you not to accept it, but you accepted it. So therefore you have agreed, just like in the same sense as an affidavit. Remember that, guys. There are times when you've got to speak up. And if you don't speak up, you've just hung yourself. But knowing when to speak, knowing when to hold them, know when to fold them. This is what you've got to get into your head. And by reading this, I believe you, by reading this document, it's going to seriously empower you. Seriously empower you, because you're going to see how you've been deceived. And there's a lot in this affidavit. And believe me, it shows you all. It shows you all, many, not all, virtually all the deceptions and how you're being tricked with money and so on and so forth. But what it means is, yeah, it really is, in layman's terms, speaking to you like you're a 7-year-old, which is beautiful. For me personally, that's what I personally think it is, because that's how we need being explained to. You know, when people try and give me something complicated, I say, look, please, tell it me like I'm a 2-year-old or a 7-year-old, you know? Tell it me, you know, keep it simple, because I'm not a clever man. I'm never said that I am. You know, I need it breaking down. I need it making simple. Keep it simple, because I'm stupid. I'm stupid. Make it as easy as possible for me to understand so that I can grasp it. Yeah. There are 12 key presumptions asserted by the private bar guilds, which, if unchallenged, stand as true, being public record, public service, public oath, immunity, summons, custody, court of guardians, court of trustees, government as executor, beneficiary, agent and agency, incompetence and guilt. 1. The presumptions of public record is that any matter brought before a state court is a matter for the public record. What, in fact, is it presumed by the members of the private bar guild that the matter is a private bar guild business matter, unless openly rebuked and rejected by stating clearly that the matter is to be on the public record, the matter remains a private bar guild matter completely under private bar guild rules. We, the undersigned, formally challenge and the presumption of the public record, as it is by definition a presumption by definition, and has no standing or merit in presentable material facts. What does it mean by this? Now, this is where you're being caught out. And now, remember when we've been doing with Anthony Badley and asking to see the case management file. Now, remember, this is a private. So this is a private building. It's not a court, guys. It's not a court. But it's a public building here, and that's a public courthouse. And therefore, if you go into the court, you must lay an information for the court actually to issue the proceedings. Now, if it's not come from the court, where's it coming from? And this is this private organization. And all the money that's coming in is going into the offshore. This is why, when you start to see about 788, 790 Finch Road, and how they've got all these companies. This is how they funnel the money that they're stealing from the people into offshore accounts, through the likes of conduits, through Ponzi scams, through 788, 790 Finchley Road and alike, and all the offshoots off that, because they're making trillions, guys. They're making trillions off the people. They're stealing everything off the people, and it's all through this presumption that they've got you believing and that you're agreeing to, which makes it law, because you're not standing up, because you're not aware of what it is that they're doing to you. So when you go into that court, which is why I say it's so important that you do this, because you're exposing the crime. you're exposing these private organisations because there is no public record. But they're making out that they are the public court. This is a public record, and all courts have to be that, because otherwise, unless it's a public record, it is just a presumption in this private bar where they'd make any rules they want to. And you've got no chance at all of ever getting any justice in their private bar associations, in these private bar courts. And the reason for why people do win is the obvious reason that obviously every now and again they've got to let somebody win, otherwise the whole world would see exactly what's happening. But even when some people win, they're still fleecing your frigging this birth certificate. This is what it's actually doing, but it doesn't exist because money doesn't exist. This is the massive illusion of the whole thing. So, so where did I get to? Yeah, so I read that, didn't I? So we, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of public record, as it is by definition a presumption, and by definition has no standing of merit or presentable material fact. So produce the material evidence, right? Let me see this. Let me see that it exists. Let me see where's the, because I mean, again, it's going to have to be consent, guys. Remember, they've got to have the consent. Yeah. And they've got to be able to produce that material evidence to substantiate that fact that actually is there. So, you know, so by requesting your case management file, you're going to see whether there is actually a record of it and whether it's on public record. And if it isn't on public record, you see that it's a private bill. You know, you can see it like this. If you're not confident enough to do lay this affidavit at them, you know, there's other ways, but this nails them. This does absolutely nail them, yeah. As the fiction, by the way, which is strange but true, because that's your legal embodiment that he's using. That's the Jesus that walked on the water, because your legal embodiment was made to your placenta, and your placenta is of the mother only. So that's the Jesus that walks on water, because it's not you, the living man. The living man, Andrew, yeah, can use his legal embodiment, because his legal embodiment has got no contract with him. Your legal embodiment has never signed any contract, never signed any consent to be governed for him. So none of those acts or statutes actually apply to Mr. Andrew Devine or to the Mr. David Ward or to the Mr. anybody out there, unless you're actually in within that contract. Unless you are a member of that corporation, i.e., you know, member of that McDonald's, and you've signed a contract with them. Then you've signed it, i.e. the police and anybody in those public services that are meant to be alleged public services, they have all sworn an oath and they have all contracted. However, they're the private bar association, they're on a higher one, they're in the private. And that's why they do what they do, because they're all working within the private. They're not, they present themselves as the public, but they hide in the private, which is why you've got to pierce the veil, guys. You have to pierce the veils to grab them and bring them out. You have to go to them as the man, whereas Baron's gone to them as the fiction to claim the money, to get them to stand surety when he's put the lien against them in this fiat world. You know, he's claiming the money of them, 15 million, 100 million, however much he's claimed off them, and they've got them to stand surety because money is the lien itself. The same as when you go to the bank and you ask for a mortgage, once you've put your moniker on that agreement, you've created the money. So that mortgage deed is that what you've just signed, that mortgage contract that you've just signed is the actual real money. Then the bank take your money that you've just stood surety to, you've just created that money. Then the bank gives you denominations, these pieces of paper that you believe as money, £20 notes, £50 notes, and so on and so forth. You believe this to be money, which is just IOUs to the real money that you've just given them, which was also an IOU because you stood surety to it. So when you create the lien, that was basically what the Baron was doing, was he was getting these to stand surety on that lien. So now you've created the money. But the trouble was the banks would never pay up, would they? Because they are all the private they're all a member of this private organisation that won't cash them in. You know, if it was a member of the bar association, they'd cash it straight away for them. But because they wouldn't cash it for us because they're dirty criminals. That's exactly what they are. That's why we went down the line, went down the road trying to get a way of converting the liens into the fiat so that we could, well, what the main thing that Baron wanted to do was to help the homeless, which was to go and remove all homeless off the streets, go around, buy them a phone, because we was going to create a template, a lien, a perfected lien on against a till receipt, because charging tax is illegal. So that was going to create a lien of £15 million for every till receipt you get that showed on it that you was being charged VAT. So when you go down and buy a phone, yeah, they give you a receipt. On that receipt, a till receipt showing that you've paid so much VAT. Then you just take a scan copy of that receipt, put it onto the perfected lien, which would then automatically give you 15 million, put it into the wallet, onto the phone, and give the homeless guy a wallet, a phone with 15 million pounds in it to go and buy a house and go and get himself back, you know, and go and do the same process with any other homeless guy that he could see, because we would have flooded the world with as much money, because we was going to truly make crime pay. And all those criminals out there that were doing the criminals, which is what you believe to be government, which is no more than corporations, which has been proven now, and the Bar Association, which is no more than a secret society, which is the real evil people of this world, because they're the ones that are really keeping this world in control through the manipulation of the words, through the manipulation of the laws, which people are not aware of because it's all gibbery-gabook. You know, that was another side to the story. The presumption of public service is that all members of the Public Bar Guild who have all sworn a solemn, secret, absolute oath, bear this in mind, guys, yeah? Remember, we talk about Freemasons and everything else. Well, there's no bigger society than these frigging things here. Probably, I mean, are these the Illuminati as well? You can pretty much damn well guarantee like that. There's going to be many members of the Illuminati inside this, because they, you know, the Jesuit and whatever else you want to call it, have infiltrated anything. Remember, it all comes down to the synagogue of Satan, yeah? Right? Because it's Satan itself, because I'm not talking about no stupid twat with horns and a red fork. This is people just like you and me that shit down a pan. These people, yeah, we can all choose to go the dark side or the light side. We can all go to, you know, the people want to go for the easier way, because it's easier to live off somebody like a parasite, yeah, and just take their money off them, yeah, than actually go out there and physically do some work, yeah. So they just sit here and they're just creaming, and they're living off us. They're living off the people, yeah, like parasites live off, like ticks, parasite politics. They're like ticks, yeah. These are ticks that are draining us, the people. And the reason the people are allowing this to happen is because they lack the knowledge to how it is that's being done to them. But once they realize, once the masses wake up and realize, you know, that's all it takes, guys. That's all it takes, the 100th monkey. When there's enough of us that realize, this ends, this stops, because we stop it, because we are the law. We are the land, we are the air, we are the water. We are the ones that, you know, created a government, and therefore we own what we create, and therefore we control what we create. But unfortunately, what's been created by man has been allowed to run amok, and the people have been asleep at the wheel, been lazy, letting the government do what it is. But they no longer are government, they're all corporations, and the corporations taken over, which is the dead entity, the workers of the dark, working in the fiction, not the facts, okay? So the presumption of public service is that all the members of the private bar guild who have all sworn on a solemn secret oath to their guild then act as public agents, and I'm repeating this because you've got to remember, these are actors, guys, you know. These actors are psychopaths. Psychopaths are the best actors because they have no empathy. That's why. And because you believe, you're judging these people by your own self. Stop it. Stop it. I used to do it. We all done it. We're all doing it. Don't judge other people by your own self because you've got empathy. These haven't. You could not imagine how evil these people could be unless you are one of them. You couldn't, I'll repeat that. You cannot imagine how evil these people are. What they could do, just as though it doesn't matter. They could see your kid be abused and raped, knowingly taking that child off you, being put into a paedophile ring, and laugh about it because they're making a lot of money out of it. They could take your children off you. They could take your property off you, and they're laughing at you. They could throw you in prison for life, and they're laughing at you. They could send you to death penalty, and they're laughing because they don't care in any way, shape, or form. You can't imagine that. That doesn't compute into your head. They could enforce injections on you, yeah, that's going to kill you. You couldn't imagine doing things like this, because that's why I'm saying don't try to imagine what you can think what somebody else can do, especially when it comes to these agents. An agent means, by the way, single A, yeah, whether there's a single syllable means no. So gents means no gents. And these are not gentlemen, guys. These are not, they may well be human. People say they're reptilian and so on and so forth. I say this shit down the pan. I say they fucking bleed. They're human in the sense as they're flesh and blood men and women that have chosen the dark side. They've chosen the dark side. Like Ronald Bernard, he was abused all of his life being brought up, and he went into the mafioso, yeah? He went into the mafioso and he didn't give a shit about anyone. He could do anything, except when he got took into the banking industry and then he got presented in front of a child sacrifice. That was when he stopped. So according to him, he said that was when he stopped because he couldn't do this to the child. And that was when his inner child was released, because it had been locked inside a bunker because of all the things that had been done to him through his life. So you can't imagine what these people are, why they are like what they are, because you've not been brought up in their shoes. You know, you only have to look at the Hampstead children case to see what happened to those two children, to understand why those children, you could see those children being psychopaths when they grow older, because that's all they've ever known. And when you start to see these things, you start to realize these private bill guys, what they do to these Freemasons, what they do to their own children, guys. These military, what they do to their own children, it's not right. And you couldn't imagine what these children have gone through. That's why I say, when you see these people that can do this, because they've got a lack of empathy, no one stood up or cared for them. Nobody stood up and cared for them. You know, I've been trying to stand up for the children for a long, long time now. But when you're not aware of it, you're not. But when you do become, you've got to do something, because these children are going to grow up, and when they're of the age to be running this country and helping out in this country, yeah, you're going to be at the age of a pensioner. And if you want looking after from the younger generation that's going to be looking after you when you're an older generation, you better fucking damn well look after your younger generation, because they're going to have no respect for you when you get older. And now look at what you're seeing in the old age pensioners' homes now. You look at what's happening to the old age pensioners' homes, guys. Now you're seeing what's happening and why it's happening. Yeah, we've had it too easy for too long, and we've been asleep at the wheel, and we've been allowing our children to be abused by fucking people like what I'm trying to explain here. Yeah, agents of government or public. So yeah, so the guild act as public agents of the government or public officials by making additional oaths of public office that openly and deliberately contradict their private superior oaths to their own guild. So they've sworn on 2 oaths, guys. That's what we're trying to say here is, yeah, these bar associations have sworn on 2 oaths. They're in a public oath, yeah, and their guild oath, their public guild oath, yeah. And you know what the Freemasons get is by hook or by crook, yeah. You speak up at these secrets, yeah. They're going to rip your tongue out, rip your fucking apart, and spill all your guts all over them. This is what they have to do to keep their quiet. Don't forget all these guild members. They've all got the little credit cards. They've got as much money as they ever need, because money isn't anything. It's just, you know, it's all backed by confidence and belief. And that the fact that money's got any value is the only reason that money's got value is because people don't know what it is. Because if you did understand what money was, you wouldn't take it. It's just pieces of paper. IOUs, absolutely worthless. It's not backed by anything. There's nothing in string to it. It's not tangible. It's just pieces of paper, toilet roll. And that's what I'm trying to say. All these people have done this. They've sold their souls for toilet roll. Yeah. So unless openly rebuked and rejected, the claim stands that these private bar guild members are legitimate public servants and therefore trustees under public oath. We, the undersigned, and me, myself, formally challenge that presumption of public service, as it is, by definition, a presumption. By definition, it has no standing or merit or presentable material fact. So you dirty little snakes that are operating in the dark, yeah, operating in the private, to make these court buildings that are meant to be public buildings, that's meant to have a public oath, and you're meant to have sworn on a public oath, but you don't give a shit for your public oath because you've sworn on your superior, hidden little secret private oath, yeah, and you think you can just ignore this because you think you've got immunity. Incorrect. Very much so incorrect. And when the people wake up and realize, you know it's over. You know it's over. And it's not really, you know, look, I'm not even gonna look, it's been a fucking free for all. The whole world's been asleep. You know, maybe, you know, these lessons were there, they needed to be done, but it's over now. It's over. And I can sort of, like, you know, understand in some aspect that why you're doing this is because of what's been done to you all of your life. Well, I wouldn't see any of that done to you. I would never have seen any of that done to you. And if you have been brought up and tortured and abused sexually and mentally and physically, then, you know, does not mean, and it does not justify you doing this to normal or other people. And just like Ronald Bernard, it broke his, you know, when he was doing this to the children. You know what's happening to the Children Bar Association. You fully well know what's happening to the children. Yeah. So enough. Stop it now, while you can still save grace. The presumption of public oath is that all members of the private bar guild acting in the capacity of public officials who have sworn a solemn public oath remain bound by that oath, and therefore bound to service honestly, impartiality and fairly as dictated by their oath. Unless openly challenged and demanded, the presumption stands that the private bar guild members have functioned under their public oath in contradiction to their guild oath. If challenged, such individuals must recuse themselves as having a conflict of interest and cannot possibly stand under a public oath. Get that one into your heads, guys. Get that into your head, meaning you can't serve two masters. You can't serve two masters, if you understand what I mean by that. You can't have two oaths and one oath being outright in the one that you're pretending to be in. You can't pretend to be under a public oath, yet your higher oath, your secret oath that you've made with your bar is not going to allow you to be exactly what your public oath is stating, being open and honest and transparent. They ain't having that. So you've got to recuse yourself. You have to recuse yourself. We, the undersigned, formally challenged the presumption of public oath as it is by definition a presumption, and by definition has no standing or merit in presentable material fact. The presumption of immunity is that the key members of the private bar guild, in the capacity of public officials acting as judges, prosecutors, and magistrates who have sworn a solemn public oath in good faith, are immune from personal claims or injury or liability, unless openly challenged and their oath demanded. The presumption stands that the members of the private bar guild, as public trustees acting as judges, prosecutors, and magistrates, are immune from any personal accountability for their actions. We, the undersigned, and me inclusive, formally challenge the presumptions of immunity, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition has no standing of merit or presentable material fact. You ain't immune. Full stop. The presumption of summons is that by customs a summons unrebutted stands, and therefore one who attends court is presumed to accept the position defendant, juror, witness, in brackets, and jurisdiction of the court. Attendance to court is usually invitation by summons, unless the summons is rejected and returned with a copy of the rejection filed prior to choosing to visit or attend. Jurisdiction and position as the accused and the existence of guilt stands. Understand that bit. Yeah. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of summons, as it is by definition a presumption, and by definition has no standing in merit or presentable material facts. The presumption of custody is that by custody a summons or warrant for arrest unrebutted stands, and therefore one who attends court is presumed to be a thing, and therefore liable to be detained in the custody by custodians. Custodians may only lawfully hold custody of property and things, not flesh and blood soul possessing beings. Unless this presumption is openly challenged by rejection of the summons and or at court, the presumption stands that you are a thing and property, and therefore lawfully able to be kept in custody by custodians. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of custody, as it is by definition a presumption, and by definition has no standing of merit or presentable material fact. The presumption of court of guardians is the presumption that you may be listed as a resident of a ward of the local government area and have listed on your passport the letter P. You are a pauper and therefore under the guardian powers of the government and its agents as a court of guardians, unless the presumption is openly challenged and demonstrate that you are both a general guardian and general executor of the matter trust before the court. The presumption stands that you are by default a pauper, a lunatic, and therefore must obey the rules of the clerk of guardians, clerk of the magistrate court. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumptions of guardians, as by its definition as a presumption, by definition, has no standing or merit or presentable material facts. The presumptions of Court of Trustees is the members of that private bar guild presume you act the office of trustee as public servant and government employee. Where's your payslip, guys? Just by attending a Roman court. As such, courts are always for public trustees by the rules of the guild and the Roman system, or originally back to Rome, unless this presumption is openly challenged, to state you are merely visiting by invitation to clear up the matter, and you are not a government employee or public trustee in this instance. The presumption stands and is assumed as one of the most significant reasons to claim jurisdiction, simply because you appeared. We, the undersigned, formally challenge the presumption of trustee, as it is by definition a presumption, and by definition has no standing or merit in presentable material facts. The presumption of government acting in two roles as executor and beneficiary is that for the matter at hand, the private bar guild appoints the judge magistrate in the capacity of executor, while the prosecutor acts in the capacity of beneficiary of the trust for the current matter. If the accused does not seek to assert their right as executor and beneficiary over their body, mind, and soul, they are acting as executor decentor, or a false executor, challenging the rightful judge as executor. Therefore, the judge and magistrate assumes the role of true executor and has the right to have you arrested, detained, fined, or forced into psychiatric evaluation, unless this presumption is openly challenged to demonstrate you are both the true and general guardian and general executor of the matter trust before the court, questioning and challenging whether the judge or magistrate is seeking to act as executor decentor. The presumption stands that you are by default the trustee, therefore must obey the rules of the executor, judge, magistrate, or you are executor decentor, and a judge or magistrate of a private bar guild may seek the assistance of bailiffs or sheriffs to assert their false claims against you. We the undersigned, and inclusive of myself, formally challenge the presumption of government acting in the two roles as executive and beneficiary, as it is by definition a presumption. By definition has no standing, merit, or presentable material fact. The presumption of agent and agency is the presumption that under contract law you have expressed and granted authority to the judge and magistrate through the statement of such words as recognize, understand, and comprehend, and therefore agree to the bound and to be bound to a contract. Therefore, unless all presumptions of agent appointment are rebutted through the use of such formal rejections as I do not recognize you, I do not recognize you at all, ain't got a clue the hell you are, prove it. To remove all implied and expressed appointment of the judge, prosecutor, or clerk as agents, the presumption stands as you agreed to be contractually bound to perform the direction of the judge or magistrates. We, the understand, inclusive of myself, formally challenge the presumption of agent and agency, as it is by definition a presumption, and by definition has no standing or merit in presentable or material facts. The presumption of incompetence is the presumption that you are at least ignorant of the law, therefore incompetent to present yourself and argue properly. Therefore, the judge and magistrate as executor has the right to have you arrested, detained, fined, or forced into psychiatric evaluation, unless the presumption is openly challenged to the fact that you know your position as executor and beneficiary and actively rebuke and object to any contrary presumptions. Then it stands by law, by time of pleading, by the time of pleading that you are incompetent, then the judge or magistrates can do what they need to keep you obedient. We the undersigned, inclusive of me, formally challenge the presumption of incompetence as by definition a presumption by definition has no standing or merit in presentable or material fact. The presumption of guilt is the presumption that, as it is presumed to be a private business meeting of the bar guild, you are guilty whether you pleaded guilty or did not plead, or plead not guilty. Therefore, unless you either previously prepared an affidavit of truth and motion to dismiss with extreme prejudice onto the public record, or call a demur, then the presumption is you are guilty, and the private bar guild can hold you until the bond is prepared and guaranteed for the amount guild wants to profit from you. We, the undersigned, inclusive of myself, formally challenge the presumptions of guilt, as it is by definition a presumption, by definition has no standing or merit in presentable material facts. We formally challenge all presumptions of law, and as we have formally challenged all 12 presumptions of law, then the presumption of law formally has no substance in material fact. As a scholar of law and recognized RBA, recognized by achievement, paralegal, by the demonstrated knowledge at court tribunal, see enclosed case exhibit, authority exhibit B, David Ward and Warrington Borough Council, 30th day of May 2013, case number WI-05257F. We will recognize the rule of law when and only when there is the material evidence of that assumed rule of law has no material evidence of substance in presentable material facts. Until that search for that rule of law that has some credibility in material fact continues, it is done without ill will or vexation. For and on behalf of the principal legal embodiment by the title, Mr. David Ward. For and on behalf of the Attorney General of the House of Ward. For and on behalf of the Baron David of the House of Ward. That'll do me now for that. I'll leave that one down. I'll put these two links in this one. I'll put it up. Anyway, but it goes in a lot more. This was the case, this is where he fought. And as you'll see, you know, the court was no contest. Yeah. And it's all in here. It's a very good read, and it goes all into many other things too. And I would suggest you all watch it. So here you go. Notice that appeal not contested by the enforcement agency. No contest. No contest. They gave up. They gave up because he was caught out. And on that note, I shall download this and I shall upload it and see if anyone likes it. I hope it makes somebody see more clearly what's going on, and to expose the illusion. Take care. God bless. Bye bye for now. Keep smiling.